Government must stop lying about Australia's problems amid royal commission. What happens when a government thinks the people are too stupid to handle the truth? Well, apparently, you get political spin so thick you could cut it with a knife. A royal commission announced at lightning speed when convenient, and a former defense expert absolutely fed up with being treated like a mushroom, kept in the dark and fed rubbish. Welcome to modern Australian politics, where the truth is optional and the gaslighting is complimentary. Quick favor, if you are loving this raw political analysis, hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell to keep getting the latest updates on politicians around the world. Cheers if you did. Now, back to the show. So let us set the scene. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has just announced a royal commission into anti-Semitism. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, even necessary, given the alarming rise in anti-Semitic incidents across Australia. But here is where things get spicy. According to Strategic Analysis Australia Director Peter Jennings, this entire exercise reeks of political theatre designed to distract from deeper, more uncomfortable truths about what is actually happening in this country. And Jennings did not mince words when he sat down with Sky News host James McPherson. They must think we are all dumb, Australians are just too dumb to handle the truth, Jennings said, with the kind of exasperation that suggests he has had enough of the political nonsense. Lying about the problems that we face in Australia right now, that does not help social cohesion either. Boom. There it is. Not just criticism, but a full-blown accusation that the government is actively lying about the challenges facing Australia. And coming from someone like Peter Jennings, that is not just noise. This bloke ran the Australian Strategic Policy Institute for years. He knows how government works, he knows how intelligence operates, and he knows when someone is selling a carefully packaged narrative instead of confronting reality. Now, before we dive deeper, let us talk about what this Royal Commission is supposedly investigating. Anti-Semitism. A genuinely serious issue that has seen a disturbing spike in Australia recently. Synagogues vandalized, Jewish Australians feeling unsafe, hateful rhetoric spreading like wildfire on social media. This is real, it is happening, and it absolutely deserves attention and action. No question about that whatsoever. But here is the thing that has Jennings and others raising eyebrows. Why a royal commission specifically into anti-Semitism, when what Australia is actually experiencing is a much broader crisis of social cohesion, community tensions, and rising extremism across multiple fronts? It is like calling the fire brigade to deal with one burning room while ignoring that the entire house is on fire. Sure, you are doing something, but are you actually addressing the real problem? Think of it this way. Imagine you go to the doctor complaining about chest pain, difficulty breathing, and fatigue. The doctor listens carefully, nods sympathetically, and then prescribes you a band-aid for a paper cut on your finger that you did not even mention. Technically, the doctor provided treatment. But did they actually address your problem? Of course not. And that is essentially what Jennings is accusing the government of doing here, treating a symptom while deliberately ignoring the disease. So what is the disease? Well, according to Jennings and a growing chorus of voices, it is the uncomfortable reality that Australia is facing serious challenges with community integration, imported conflicts playing out on our streets, and rising tensions fueled by geopolitical events overseas. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has generated massive protests, counter-protests, and sometimes outright violence in Australian cities. We have seen communities polarized, accusations flying in all directions, and a general sense that something has fundamentally shifted in how Australians relate to each other. And here is where the government's response becomes problematic. Instead of having an honest, comprehensive conversation about these challenges, what do we get? A narrowly focused royal commission that, critics argue, allows the government to look like they are taking action while avoiding the harder questions about immigration, integration, multiculturalism, and whether current policies are actually working. Jennings absolutely nailed this point when he said the government must think Australians are too dumb to handle the truth. Because that is exactly what this feels like. Political leaders assuming they can package a complex, multifaceted crisis into a neat, politically palatable investigation that will not ruffle too many feathers or force uncomfortable admissions about policy failures. But Australians are not dumb. They can see what is happening in their communities. They can feel the tension at public events. They can read about violent protests and attacks on religious sites. They know this is not just about anti-Semitism, as serious as that is. This is about something bigger, something more fundamental, and pretending otherwise is not just dishonest, it is dangerous. Let us talk about that danger for a second, because this is where Jennings really drove the point home. Lying about the problems that we face in Australia right now, that does not help social cohesion either. Bloody oath, it does not. Social cohesion, the delicate fabric that holds diverse communities together, relies on trust. Trust that leaders are being honest about challenges. Trust that problems will be addressed openly rather than swept under the rug. Trust that when things go wrong, the response will be proportionate and genuine, not politically calculated. When governments lie, or even when they are perceived to be lying, the trust evaporates faster than water on a scorching summer day. And once it is gone, rebuilding it is incredibly difficult. People become cynical. They stop believing official narratives. They turn to alternative sources of information, some credible, many not. Division deepens. Conspiracy theories flourish. And the very social cohesion the government claims to be protecting actually deteriorates faster. Here is the kicker. Royal commissions are supposed to be these sacred cows of accountability, right? Independent, thorough, beyond political interference. But even that veneer can be tarnished when the scope of an inquiry is so carefully crafted that it avoids asking the questions that really matter. It is like hiring an investigator to find out why your house keeps flooding but specifically telling them they are not allowed to look at the burst pipe in the basement. Sure, you will get a report, but will it actually solve anything? And that is what has people like Peter Jennings so frustrated. He is watching a government deploy one of Australia's most powerful investigative tools, not necessarily to uncover truth, but to manage optics, to create the appearance of action without the substance of genuine reform, to tick a box that says we took anti-Semitism seriously without addressing the broader context in which anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred are flourishing. Now, let us be clear about something. Calling out anti-Semitism is absolutely necessary. Jewish Australians deserve to feel safe in their own country, to practice their religion without fear, to send their kids to school without worrying about attacks. Nobody is disputing that. But fighting anti-Semitism effectively requires understanding and addressing the broader ecosystem of hatred, extremism, and social fragmentation. You cannot isolate one form of bigotry and expect to solve it while ignoring how it connects to and feeds off other tensions in society. It is like trying to clean up one corner of a filthy room while ignoring the rubbish piled everywhere else. Sure, that corner might look better temporarily, but the overall problem has not been solved. And eventually, the filth from the rest of the room is going to creep back into that clean corner anyway. This is where the accusation of lying becomes so potent, because if the government knows, and they absolutely must know, that the challenges Australia faces go far beyond anti-Semitism alone, then choosing to frame the response so narrowly is fundamentally dishonest. It is telling Australians that this is the problem, when actually it is just one manifestation of a much larger problem, and that kind of dishonesty, as Jennings pointed out, actively undermines social cohesion. Think about it from a practical standpoint. If you are a Muslim Australian watching this unfold, you might reasonably ask why there is not similar attention given to Islamophobia, which has also seen disturbing rises. If you are from any number of other communities experiencing discrimination or hatred, you might wonder why your concerns seem less worthy of a royal commission. And suddenly, instead of uniting Australians against all forms of hatred, the government's response has inadvertently created a hierarchy of victimhood and resentment. That is not strategic thinking. That is political box-ticking that creates more problems than it solves. And it is precisely the kind of approach that drives people like Peter Jennings to publicly call out the government for treating Australians like they are too dumb to see through it. So where does this leave us? Well, we will get our Royal Commission into anti-Semitism. It will investigate, it will hold hearings, it will eventually produce a report with recommendations. Some of those recommendations might even be implemented. But the fundamental question remains, will any of this actually address the deeper challenges facing Australian society? Or is this just expensive political theater designed to create the illusion of action while avoiding the harder conversations we desperately need to have? Peter Jennings clearly thinks it is the latter. And given his credentials and experience, that is not an opinion to dismiss lightly. When someone who spent their career in strategic analysis tells you the government is lying about the problems Australia faces, maybe, just maybe, it is worth paying attention. Thanks for watching, legends. Catch you in the next one.